All right, here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody's getting in out of the cold here at the Canon Creative Studio, this wonderful place here. My name is Jay Holben. I'm the technical editor of American Cinematographer magazine. I'm a producer and director in Los Angeles and an associate member of the ASC. And it's my pleasure to be up here and to moderate these panels and to host these two fantastic cinematographers here. And we're going to have a very, very light-hearted conversation about trauma. So please enjoy that, and I hope you all have enjoyed the warm-up comedian, so everybody's all ready to laugh at this conversation we're about to have. But thank you, Brandon and Sam, for joining us. And I'm going to let you guys do the hard work because I'm lazy. So tell me a little bit about the film that you have here and a little bit about yourself, and take it away. I'm going to start with you, Brandon.
I'm Brandon Somerhalder. I'm not comfortable doing things like this, so thanks for your patience. I was the DP on a film called Come See Me in the Good Light, which is a feature documentary about Andrea Gibson, who's a poet, the poet laureate of Colorado, who has cancer, was given an incurable diagnosis, and kind of channeled their new perspective on mortality into their poetry and their work and their life, and we made a documentary about it. And yeah, kind of the ups and downs of the cancer journey and their life with their partner, Meg Fowley, who just was also going through that journey with them. And we filmed their lives very intimately for about a year, and just premiered last night. And Andrea is still here with us, and got to go to the premiere as well. So yeah, that's what the film is about. I primarily just shoot documentaries and a lot of films like this, which is kind of longer form verite docs, and that's my story.
Hi, I'm Sam Motamedi. I was the director of photography of the feature film Ricky that we just premiered on Friday, and I'm primarily a narrative filmmaker. I was originally studying political science, and after graduating, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I started working at a production company, and eventually applied to NYU's graduate film program, where I studied for a few years, and I met many of my collaborators, and was lucky enough to work on a thesis film that was Ricky, the short that premiered here 2 years ago. And I was able to take that relationship with the director and work on the feature version that we just premiered. Yeah.
Congratulations, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So there's truth in the evolution, right? You make the short, you get into the little Sundance Film Festival, and then you get to make the feature, and here you are. Yes, sir. And congratulations on both of you for your premieres, and I hope things are going extraordinarily well.
Hope so too.
I don't know where that was going. That wasn't a question. I just threw that out there. Yeah, that was my fault. I'm going to take full responsibility. Brandon, you said something in our email exchanges prior to this that really resonated with me, that documentaries are empathy machines, right? And that really meant a lot, and I relate to that deeply, but I'd like to kind of get a little deeper into that discussion and what your thought is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the main logistical reason why I got into documentaries was because I think the filmmaking process is very, it's hard to get into, and it costs a lot of money, and it's a very collaborative art. You need people, but the one form where you don't really need money or people is documentary. You can go and shoot a great documentary, with one person, two people, and I think that the reason I've stayed in documentary is because, yeah, I find it to be the best form for connecting with people and experiencing life's ups and downs, and I think that narrative, obviously has a much broader audience, and I think it's useful in that way to allow people to experience other characters, other forms of life and lifestyles, but with doc, it's all very real, and I also I just feel like it's an opportunity to put a lens on someone's experience. And, we talk about living in someone else's shoes, and, the camera tries to do that often, is, tries to live the subjective reality of you're facing death. You're looking it in the face. Like, what does that feel like for our subject? And my job is just to try to bring an audience into that experience, and hopefully walk out of the theater and walk down Main Street and look at, the light hitting a building a certain way and say, wow, I probably wouldn't have noticed that before this movie. Or, it's just a different, it's a way to provide a different perspective. And I think I'm just fascinated by people. I love people, and I love kind of trying to figure out what makes them tick. And I think that docs, I get to make my living just staring at people's faces all day on a camera, and just seeing the nuances of how they react to different situations. So it's a perfect job for me. And then I get to share it with everybody else when they see the film. So in terms of empathy, it's something I think the world needs and likes. I think people like to experience other people's experiences, but it's just finding the right way to balance, not forcing something down people's throats, but knowing that it's a beautiful thing to get to experience someone else's reality.
It's something we talked about in a previous panel, but early in my career in working in docs, I felt that as a cinematographer, as a camera operator, it was my job to be invisible, to disappear, and to have no interaction with the subjects. And the latter part of my career, I realized that I felt that was a mistake, that it was really about having empathy and connection with the subject that allowed for a better trust and a more honest, open communication. Would you agree with that, or how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly something I think about a lot, and I think it's the difference between, people talk a lot about fly on the wall docs, which doesn't exist. It's when the camera's there, there's a certain performance that happens regardless, and I think that the way, honestly, it's kind of a funny realization with this getting into Sundance and kind of being able to be retrospective about it. Andrea and Meg have 3 dogs that they live with and who they love like they're their children. And I almost felt like the camera was like a 4th dog, that they, it's like it's part of that love. It's part of the family, and it's part of their experience, and it's subjective. It's not objective. It's part of, any time that, in the film, whenever they got bad news, you can hear Squash, one of their dogs, start to bark because they can feel that energy. And it's like the camera is part of that too, where, and I, we would have full days in the hospital doing chemo treatments and doing, getting good news and bad news. And they would look at, they look at me because I'm a human in the room too. And it's not so much about just capturing the numbers, but it's also being a person that gets to experience this with them, that they can, it was only them two experiencing a lot of it together. And so the camera provided an outlet for them. And, I was just the one lucky enough to be the one holding the camera, but for them, it was it allowed them to kind of have the public at large with this film get to have a big hug around them through this experience. So I really think that documentaries are becoming more subjective. I think it's great because, the whole kind of objective fly on the wall documentary doesn't exist. And the more that you can become a part of the experience, I think the better, like we were saying, that the empathy expands even more.
Okay, I gotta reference another panel because we just had a great sort of epiphany about fly on the wall, because a lot of people use that term, right? But that's, as was discussed a little bit earlier, the fly is the one thing you don't want in the room. You want to shoo the fly out of the room and get rid of it, and that's not, as a filmmaker, what you want to be. You want to be a comforting, inviting part of that empathy, right? So butterfly on the wall is the new phrase we're going to use. Thank you, Leon, for that. Yeah, right? I think another thing for me was, being an empathetic individual, when do I shoot and when do I not shoot? When do I give the subject their space? And it's so intrusive at a really emotional moment to be rolling a camera on them. How do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's really hard when you're shooting a doc, and when you sign up for a doc like this, knowing that those moments are going to come up. And I mean, Andrea, the first time we met them on the driveway, was like, wow, it's so crazy meeting strangers who are going to be with me when I die. And we're all kind of like, oh my God. Yeah, we all knew that signing up, but to say it so upfront. But I mean, they're artists. Andrea and Meg, they're artists, and so they understand the process. So that made it easier to know that, like, you know, we're going to have to be there for the good times and the bad times. And I think I mentioned this in the emails that we were exchanging before, but part of the doc experience is, like, it's not only about capturing the good stuff, it's about capturing the really uncomfortable parts of life. And speaking about what the panel's about trauma, I think trauma reveals character in its rawest form. And I think people want to, like, as an audience, we want to see people. That's why we're so attracted to that on screen, is because we want to see what happens when people are put under that pressure, when they're put in traumatic situations, and to see how they react, and then to relate it to their own lives, or to just admire or respect the way that the people on screen are reacting to their situation. And so, yeah, I mean, my instinct every single time is to put down the camera and, like, you know, give him a hug or sit next to him or whatever. But I think it also does a disservice to them allowing us into this whole thing. You know, I don't want them to be like, wait, you weren't rolling on that moment. You know, it's like, that's why we're there. That's part of the experience, is so that everybody who wasn't in the room with me and Meg and Andrea can experience this beautiful moment that they're experiencing just between the two of them. And I think there's, like, a ton of value in the camera's, you know, ability to capture those moments and be there. And that's our job at the end of the day, is to experience those moments with them, the good and the bad and the traumatic and the joyful. So.
And Sam, on your side, even though your film is fictional, you know, it's a fictional narrative, you're still dealing with really heavy subjects of an incarcerated individual who is experiencing life outside of their prison term and really, you know, growing up as an adult. So it's your job to take that situation and visualize the traumatic aspect of that. So now I'm just going to throw the grenade in your lap. How the hell do you do that?
Sure. Well, in the case of Ricky, like, as in the case of many narratives I've done, is, like, very often we don't show the traumatic event itself. So what we really rely on is observing the character and seeing how they behave in their day-to-day lives. And through, you know, how they react to certain things and how we frame it, we can understand more about the nature of their trauma. So, for example, in the short version of Ricky that we did, a key thing was Ricky has been incarcerated for many years. So he's very uncomfortable when he's in a room and someone closes the door and it's shut. And so we understand that in his mind as the filmmakers that, you know, he now feels claustrophobic. So you show the door closing, then you cut to him noticing the door closing, and then you see that he reacts differently in that context to everyone else around him. So how much of how we portray this individual's trauma is, how does he see things happening in a scene, and how does he react differently to these things than everyone else that's occupying that space. I had a very interesting thing that happened to me leading up to making this film. I had a friend come out of prison after many years of incarceration, and I was at a pizza shop with his brother. And all three of us were there, and then his brother bumped into a little girl. And immediately my friend went to his brother and said, you need to go apologize to that little girl. You scared her, you traumatized her. And my friend was being, you know, like, what are you talking about? I just brushed her, so she's fine. And then this argument escalated to the point where they called the police and we all had to run out. And I realized in that moment that people that have experienced certain traumas react differently than normal people under circumstances because they're sensitive to certain things. And, then as a filmmaker, like how our job is to then, portray that through their behaviors, through the shots, through the close-ups, through the insert of like, this thing that only they notice in the scene. One thing that in the NYU graduate film program that they taught us well that I was very appreciative of was the first year we do this project called the observational character study, where you can't talk to the subject. You can only, you find a subject and you follow them for a period of few days, and you have to film them, and through your shots that we put together, we have to understand who this person is through their behaviors, through their characters, like what they do, how they go about their day, and then pick the shots that are the most meaningful, and then get the audience to understand who this person is just from that. And so the subject I followed was, my next door neighbor, who's an elderly woman who is, her sons aren't always around, and so a lot of the how we understand her is there all the times that she called and then the call goes to voicemail and the camera just stays on her and you can just hear, you've reached so and so. I'm not gonna say the name. So and so, and I'm not here right now. And she's like, he's always busy. Closes, boom, and then in those moments you feel for, who is this person? I know someone like this, And the trick is just, finding those little bits of things that or your character sees that other people might not see, and in those moments that describe, their humanity. Who are they? What are they dealing with? I think that's, yeah.
Oh, no, that's exactly the answer I was looking for. I mean, for me as a filmmaker, I'm generally more attracted to subjective storytelling, where we're into the perspective and we're discovering a story as the character does. I mean, that's generally where I lean towards, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about, like putting the audience into the perspective of that character and what they're experiencing. So I just took all the words and made them my own because I make it all about me. That's what I do. Absolutely. So I just got the scolding from my wonderful team back there that just bring the mic a little bit closer.
Sorry.
There you go.
Got it.
And I just derailed myself because I got scolded, and I'm really I don't like being yelled at. How did you originally get involved with the short of Ricky, and what was the development to decide to make the feature?
Sure. So my first year at NYU's graduate film program, our professors showcased Rashad's second-year film, and I met Rashad that day, and he would always be around. And at NYU, they often make us do directing exercises every week, so we have to go out and shoot something, come back and present it. And I always see Rashad in the halls, and I would grab him and bring him in and be like, hey, give me some notes on this homework assignment I have to submit by the end of the week. And so after, having given me notes for an entire semester of like, cut that shot, do this shot, I like what you did there, we became friends. And by the time it came time to do his thesis, we'd known each other for a while, and he came. I was like, "Would you be interested in shooting this project? I've seen how you work with the camera, and I like kind of like the way you move and the verite style that you've shot all your homework assignments in, and I think this could work out." And I was like, "Absolutely, I'd love to come on board." And so we did the short. I think it was a 5-day shoot in 2022, and then it premiered here in 2023, and then. And Rashad is such a good friend and such a loyal friend. When he got the bigger project, he came back and was like, "Sam's my guy to shoot it," and I was so grateful and honored to be brought back and have the opportunity to work with Rashad and my friends from school all over again. Yeah.
And now, since we're sitting here at the Canon Creative Studio, I got to get with the nerdy, technical kind of. Otherwise, they don't pay me. What did you shoot with, and why those choices?
Sure. So we shot on the Alexa 35 in Super 16 mode with the Canon Super 16 zoom lenses. So the 8-64, 11-135, and I believe the 11-1. I forget the exact focal range, but that family of lenses. And they're dubbed the Hurt Locker lenses because they were very famously used in the Hurt Locker with the Aton shooting 16. And we really liked the look. And initially, we knew we were going to be shooting in maybe areas that we have to get in and out fast, and like I needed to be able to move fast and reframe and punch in. And I had this headset, and I'd have Rashad always telling me, punch in, and I was like, okay, I got it. So it it was very efficient for our style, and also on those 1 terabyte cards on the Alexa 35, we got something like 4 hours of runtime on each card, which was we could really just go out and shoot the way I did when I was like a kid on a Canon T2i and a kit lens running around making movies. So it was like it felt good to be back in that run and gun style of like, let's shoot this like we're not allowed to shoot here. Even though we were this time, just to be clear, we were allowed to shoot in these places, but just to have that feeling of like I can, if I don't like what I'm doing, it's not going to take me 20 minutes to reset what I'm doing. I can immediately go around, punch in, get a good. Oh, I forgot the insert. You know what? We need the insert of that cup or whatever for whatever reason. Boom! I can just jump around and make sure we get what we need. And now I did learn an important lesson on this, if I may share. Is that just because our department, you have to take into account holistically. Like sometimes when you're moving so fast, you forget that other departments need time as well. And then suddenly you're like, all right, we're ready to go. And you're like, oh no, but we need this prosthetic is going to take another hour to set up. And you're like, oh man, I didn't really need the extra time here. But it was nice to always, not have the pressure of like someone telling me like you have 5 more minutes to light, like 10 more, and having to do that math in your head all the time, which is like, how much can I lie and get away with about how much more time I need?
It's always 5 minutes, right?
It's always
5 minutes, no matter what the answer. 5 minutes, that's all I need.
Minutes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I shot my first feature on those Canon lenses, and I'm a huge fan of the Canon 8-64. When I can afford the set, I'm going to definitely purchase a set.
That 8-64 is a great workhorse. I mean, it's been around for a long time, and it is really a very popular, well-used lens. Why the choice of Super 16?
A lot of our references were films that were shot Super 16. I mean, we couldn't get to shoot on film, sadly, this time around. But like Hurt Locker. What else? There was a few films we looked at, and like the depth of field, like and also for some reason, I don't know if this is just my brain, but when I punch in with that lens, it feels, I don't know, different, like more organic. Like when I do I don't know how to describe it, and it's like very, very flattering lens too. It's not too, it's not clinical. It has a really nice texture that then I can go and post and really play with, the shadows and just add how much grain I like, which is always a lot, but they always drag my grain back down. And it's so lightweight. 90% of this movie was like handheld. And I'm running around for hours a day with an Easy Rig. And the Alexa 35 with all the accessories and the cine tape and the this and that and all not too technical. My ACs are brilliant. They do an amazing job. But by that point, like, it starts to hurt. And like to have like a really big, like I was looking at the Easy series and I was like, oh, those are probably too heavy for what I'm doing here. I need something. I was gonna go with the short we actually did on the Ingenue 24-75, I think it was. But for this, we decided to go with these lightweight Canons for the feature because it was just, one, it was something I was very familiar with because I did my first feature on the same lens. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely loved, and on that film, it was, we shot on the Red Epic, which we had to crop to like a 2.5K to not get any vignetting. But luckily the Alexa 35 has a nice Super 16 mode and gives a very beautiful, not film completely, but a very pleasing thing to my eye that I really enjoyed. And watching the dailies every day was just like, wow, this looks great. We're gonna be good. Yeah.
It's nice when you have that feeling, right?
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. Brandon, how about yourself?
We shot, like our main camera was the C500, Canon C500 Mark II, which is just like a total workhorse for doc. I love it. But it was, we started shooting this really quickly, and it's what the director and producer owned, and they were like, we're just using our stuff, like let's use it. And shout out Canon T2i. Love the T2i. I feel like that's how so many people, like DPs of our age, started shooting, was on that camera. But yeah, I've always loved Canon, but hadn't had the chance to shoot on the C500. And it's such a great camera. And for this shoot in particular, all of the regular stuff, the internal NDs was huge, the dual card slots to be able to roll over to another card, and I could swap because, it was, I never knew when an emotional or hilarious moment would come up, and we were shooting so much footage every day. and then the onboard audio. Our sound mixer's right here, Dave. But when he couldn't be there, or just in case, having the onboard audio was huge for us on any dock, just as a fail-safe. And when I'm really close, it's like that mic is 12 inches from them, and it's like a nice intimacy. And so we used Canon cameras. We used a C70 there's like a live show at the end of the show where we had like 5 cameras, and it's like a doc labor of love, like classic cliche. We just literally took all the cameras that we owned collectively and used them on the show. So it was like this amalgam of Canon and Sony. And for the hospital visits, there were some hospitals that were like really annoying and wouldn't let me shoot. So I would shoot like part on an iPhone and then like sneak my little my little Sony FX3 in and shoot some stuff. But it was that kind of shoot where it was like the story trumps the technical, and we're just going to try to capture whatever we can, and then in post, make it all as seamless as possible for the audience. But Canon, the C500 never failed, and that's huge. On a doc shoot, I feel like some of these like really amazing cinema cameras, there's times where like you pull the battery the wrong way and it'll cycle, and you don't know if that media is corrupted, and it just never happened for us. And that was, I feel like that was a huge priority for us, just to make sure that like what we were getting was safe.
No failures with the Canon cameras. All right, we got that. Get that in.
Check.
Yeah, right? Okay, woo! So we talked about the idea of how delicate it is to shoot intimate moments, traumatic moments. But one of the things that's always been curious to me, and I have my idea of how I process it, but when you are experiencing that trauma with somebody that you care about because you get invested in your subjects, how do you deal with it when you leave, when you wrap for the night, when you go away, when you're watching the film in the premiere and having all of this experience of being the stranger who met somebody who's dying? How do you process that?
I haven't really figured it out yet. I think it's a lot of like shoving down. But I think it's like it's just being empathetic with their situation is the priority on set, and then I think it's usually like weeks or so later that it might come up. But I think it's I don't know. It can be like weary to just kind of like be crying with, like be filming heavy emotions all of the time. But yeah, it feels like it's in service of something. And so I guess, if it's worth it. And, but I don't really have an answer as to like how to deal with it. I have a therapist, and he's like, how was your shoot this week? Every working in doc, it's like, there's always something. But yeah, it's not like, I don't know. I feel like I process it through the person who's going through it and trying to like understand them, and it's it's not about me. And I feel like, of course, there's a little residual there of just like experiencing it, but it's with any movie or like last night, it was so great to have Meg and Andrea at the screening and to be able to experience just watching the film with them. And it's funny because we've like gone through so many ups and downs together, and this was like we saw them, and the first thing they said, they were like I'm feeling more than maybe I've felt the entire time that we were shooting, because all of these people are gonna see, like, yeah, it's very revealing. But yeah, it's just nice to be able to like, have a little knowing look when you see them across the room and give them a big hug. And, it's like any friendship or, loving relationship. It's like, yeah, we've experienced things together, and it's lovely, and I'm very happy to have been a part of it. So.
Can I ask something?
Please.
Someone once told me that when you're doing this kind of documentary work, you, at the end of a session or something, you try and keep it on a more positive, like walk out with it. If they pour their heart out, you like make it lighthearted before you end. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, I mean, there were times they would always try to end on a good note, just because that's who they were. But there were times, I mean, we had a lot of like travel in, build the camera in the car on the way to their house, shoot, and then, shoot the following days, and then shoot, and then travel out on the same day. And so we would have deadlines or like flights that we would have to catch. And one of the hardest ones was Andrea got denied for a trial that they thought they were going to be able to do. And the doctor had been really optimistic about, and they were on a Zoom call, and it was probably like the most devastated I'd seen them, and we were filming with them. And it was like, we had to leave at 4:30 to catch our flight, and it's like 4:35, 4:45, and we're still filming. And then it's like, at a certain point, we just had, like, they shut off the Zoom, and we just like, without really speaking, we all just like hugged each other and left. And yeah, it's like a super heavy drive to the airport, because you're like, I don't know. Yeah, there's just like a certain amount of, but that's part of it, that's part of life, and filming docs and stuff. It's just kind of, you want to be there for those moments, but also you can't be there all of the time. So you just balance it.
And even though what you're dealing with is fictional, it doesn't relieve you from the idea of shooting trauma. I had an experience on a TV show that I was working on where half the crew had to leave the set because they were so traumatized by what we were shooting. How do you deal with that? I mean, I still have sort of PTSD just from shooting a completely fictional scene. How do you deal with that? How do you process?
Oh, it's tough. It's not easy, and I'm still figuring it out. But because also like these stories take the talent to places that are like very dark, and you have to kind of be, as a cinematographer, cognizant of, okay, where is this person's headspace? How close can I really get to the actor in this scene to get the shot that I want, knowing the way they're going to move after going through these emotions. Like, he's going to lash out, and he's really, I believe it. I can see that he's living, wherever he's getting it from, maybe something from their own life, an experience they're trying to reenact. And it's like, you have to be extremely respectful, because you don't want to take them out of that, what they're, sorry, is there something wrong with my mic? They want to know, like, you want to make sure that you're very cognizant of like what they're trying to do, and to be as like a fly on the wall in these scenes as much as you can, and not really get in their way. So you rehearse the blocking, you make sure, okay, these are the islands that I can hang out in and observe without, and giving the actor the most freedom to, really pour their heart out into that moment. And it's tough. No, I cried a few times on this film. Just the nature of also reenacting scenes that you have seen on, the news so many times, or we've watched so many like arraignment hearings and things like that, and like watching people have to go through these proceedings and traumas, and it's. I think you just have to approach it with a level of respect, understanding like what we're portraying on screen. A lot of people have actually lived through, and it's just devastating. And then, putting it on screen in a way that's, that is respectful to the real life experiences of people that have done these things. So there's two things. It's dealing with the actors going through the scenes in the scene, and then also how you're ultimately going to portray it to audiences that have actually lived through these moments. And it's a difficult thing that, I struggle with as well, and hopefully do a good job portraying. And but I think part of it is, taking yourself out of it, being like, okay, like, I want to get this really cool shot, or do I want to, let these people live their truth, and sacrificing it when is necessary, and finding, okay, when is it appropriate to do the, thing that I want versus what we really need to do, which is always service the story and the script. So you take your ego out is the key here. Yeah.
Nice. Take your ego out. I like that. Do you also have a therapist?
I should.
I highly.
I need one.
I highly recommend it. It's. I want to give all of you a chance to ask a question of the two gentlemen here. So ponder that in your head. Don't be shy. Stick your paw up in the air, and we'll bring a microphone around to you, and you can have a chance to ask a question of these two. So who's first? Who's the guinea pig? Nope. Don't everybody jump up at once. That just gets crazy. Okay, you got nothing. That leaves the pressure back on me. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. Microphone's going to come to you so the people at home can, yeah.
This is for Brandon. It's a question about what glass did you shoot on, and did you shoot raw on the C500? How'd you feel like the color was in post? A little technical.
Yeah. Lens-wise, I shot on the CP2s.
You don't have to apologize about that. That's okay. It's all good.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if I'm totally honest, I don't love those lenses, but it was a great practice. It was what they owned. It was what Ryan and Jess owned. And we started shooting this thing with no financing, and they were like, it's kind of a development shoot. We'll just go and shoot it a little bit. And they probably hate me for saying this, but it's the truth, so whatever. But but it was, I mean, yeah, it was a great practice in terms of just like focusing on composition, I knew I wanted to shoot on primes because we had the Canon. Is it the L series? Is that the L series? And I chose the CP2s. I was like, I just want to stick with primes and really be intentional with composition. And yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't go to them first choice again, but I think that it was nice. And I think if you watch the film, it's like we found a nice balance using those lenses. And then in terms of color space and everything, we shot raw, or we shot S-Log 2, S-Log 3. I had built a LUT for the shoot that was like kind of moody, and then they, like, as we kept shooting, it was like a very hilarious, like joyful film, and I kept wanting to bring more warmth in. So in color, we ended up bringing more warmth into a lot of the scenes. They live in Colorado, so it's a lot of like, inside of their house, and then there was like a whole hospital, a lot of hospital rooms and stuff. But the look ended up veering a bit more warm. And yeah, I mean, color-wise, I think the Canon's great, and dynamic range, it was awesome. I mean, I'm still like figuring out Canon in low light, like figuring out how to expose properly there and on dock stuff. But I mean, it worked exactly how I needed it to work for the whole shoot. So I was really, really happy. Canon.
Thank you, Canon. You just brought up a really interesting point, which is in documentary, the story is evolving as you're capturing it. You don't actually know necessarily what you're going to get, but coming in with one plan and then realizing that the truth of what you're telling leads you another direction. Have you experienced that before, especially in terms of the look, or was this a first-time experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I had experienced it on other like long form verite docs that I'd shot, where you definitely go in and you try to, I mean, you have a ton of references of like, oh, this film is about this, and it's I feel like it evokes these emotions, and these narrative movies and doc movies kind of have similar feel. So we like throw a bunch of, like, Ryan and I threw a bunch of movies onto the just like, screenshots and stuff. Actually, our two main references were Past Lives and All of Us Strangers. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but we were just like, these are like gorgeous, like, love stories. And they're very intimate, and the composition is like key. And, with shoots like this, we don't have control of color. Like, I didn't light anything except there's one poetry reading where we like, blew a light in through a window, but 99.9% is all natural light. So we can't really like establish a palette. But composition I have control over. And so it's like, in Past Lives, like the way that they're framed and how, how close their faces are and how close the camera is versus another shot that's 2 feet further back. And you're like, oh, you feel the distance there. And so those are things where when I'm moving the camera around, I actually do have control over, and I can, and also I shot it mainly on sticks, which I think for a verite film is like maybe a little more unconventional, but I knew the hospital stuff would be kind of chaotic. So everything in their house, we wanted something a bit more calm and a lot of like slow pans between them. And, you try to like implement control into an uncontrollable situation. But yeah, that's my favorite part of the process, is not knowing where things are going to go, because I think, that's kind of how life goes. You make your schedule for next week, and then something happens, and my New Year's resolution was to become more organized, and then half of LA starts lighting up on fire, and you're like, okay, well, now it's just kind of like, maintain your sanity. That's the new thing. So you just, it's like you adapt, and how you adapt is how character develops, and how you become who you are, and how you understand the world and the people around you. So I love that aspect of doc.
I think you had a question over there. So we got, is the mic still out here? Somebody still have it? Oh, it's in your paw already. Look at that. I am way behind the times. Please go ahead.
My name is Louisa. I'm a writer-director from Vancouver. And I feel that, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that the director-DP relationship is incredibly collaborative and equal, even though we get a lot of glory and a lot of shit. I'm not going to lie. But so can you talk about your relationship with your directors, and like the collaboration process, and like, the power dynamics when things are not going great?
Should I? Yeah, sure. So luckily enough for me, I was friends with Rashad long before we shot this film. So we've been, really close for a while now. And for me, at least in my experience, it's always been easier when it's somebody I've been very close friends with outside of the professional workplace, because we have an openness with each other that I can say something, I can make fun of them, I can talk with, and in a way, not in front of the crew obviously, but like in between each other, I can be like, this is a terrible idea. Or he can say like, no, this is stupid, we're not doing that. And like, there's no love lost between either of us. And we're more open to compromising with each other when there are creative differences. And luckily, if you have a long-standing relationship with somebody, you have all of the, the time and the relationship and the communication where you can work these things out so that you're not surprised on set. Because you know each other so well by that point. I did even something with Rashad that I've never done before with anyone, which is I would wear a headset on while I'm operating handheld, and he would tell me like punch in, and like do this, no, whip up, and I would like, and normally that might really annoy me, but then because we're such close friends, I would listen, we would kind of like play tennis with each other with the frame sometimes, and it would be kind of like a fun. Directing exercise, I would say. But even though it was a big film, and in the end, like, we got everything we needed, and we're still good friends, so I think it worked out in the end.
In my situation, our director, Ryan White, he's a phenomenal doc director, and he hadn't done as many, like, kind of verite films, and when our first meeting, he was like, well, I like the way that you approach verite, and I want to kind of like, work with you on that. And I loved how open he was about that, because I feel like with directors sometimes they like to, tell you what they're really good at versus telling you what they want to improve upon, or like what you could add to them. And I feel like that's how our relationship has been. It's been he's the director and I'm the director of photography. And the photography aspect, especially with verite, it's hard. He operated a bunch of his films for years back in the day, so he knows how to work a camera. And but he allows me to focus on the photography, and he focuses on the emotions and the story at large. Because if we have a dinner scene with 5 people and I'm covering it with one camera, and there's a range of emotions and reactions and laughs and ups and downs, I have to focus on making sure this scene is cuttable for our editor, as well as, focusing on what each person is actually going through emotionally in that scene. He has to focus on how this scene actually works within the grand scheme of the film. And I think that having that relationship and that dynamic really helped, and him being able to just kind of trust me. I mean, there were a lot of times where it was just me shooting, and he would just allow me to do that, and he would always watch the footage afterwards, and we would always kind of like decompress about what happened, what's happening in the story. And I think his genius is in the edit, always, which is most doc people. That's where documentaries come together, is in the edit. And I'm just like, spraying the wall, very intentionally spraying the wall, but trying to get as much as possible for the editor. But he's such a good editor, and he knew how to craft this story in a way that it would really bring the audience into the experience. Yeah.
You're welcome. So we probably have time for one more. Anybody want to toss out one more question? Yes, sir. We're going to pass the microphone over to you over here. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Dusan Brown. I'm a director, writer. So in pre-production, I heard you guys talking a lot about the type of stuff that you were going to use and whatnot, but I just want to know more so about like your thought process for why the things that you chose. Like, I think you were talking a little bit about like shooting on a phone in a hospital because you couldn't, X, Y, Z, but I want to know a little bit more about the thought process behind some of the things that you chose, and also the thought process behind understand like that you let them talk to you through the headset, but like, that's a level of trust that I've never heard before. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? I understand that you guys were friends before, but that's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, no, I thought it was crazy at first too. But then the good thing with Rashad is he's also a cinematographer. He's DP'd a lot, so I trust his taste in framing, and I understand he's a good editor. So I know in his mind, and this happened a lot with his short, where we would be through a scene, and then he would just in the middle of the scene say whip right, and so I would just in the middle of the scene jerk the camera right, and then suddenly when I see the edit, I'm like, oh, he wanted me to whip right because in this moment he knew he was gonna cut and then whip left, transition into a completely different scene. And he only realized it because he was cutting the movie in his head while we were filming. So by the time we came to the feature, when he would give me something that to my mind, maybe I was like, are you sure you want to punch into that or what? I'm like, okay, no, he knows why he's doing this in this moment. I'm like, okay, so the trust was established that by the, like in the short, he would whisper it in my ear, but now it was like with the headset, it was a lot easier because he could just be at the monitor. And in terms of equipment, again, a lot of it was like, I knew some of the locations we had to shoot in. I knew that I was going to be operating handheld most of the movie, and I knew it was going to be hours at a time. So that, that decides what kind of support equipment you need, like what's the discipline of how you're shooting, like offloading, how many cards a day, what lenses, what tools, like what's, we're shooting in a car, like how much, headroom do I have in the car before like the camera's too low, like what do I have to remove, configure, like all the different configurations. It all comes from like, you sit down with your director, you talk about what the shots are gonna be, and then you do all of the logistics and prep. Something that I recommend people do that I don't see too many people doing nowadays is any location you go to, you can get a photogrammetry scan with your phone. And then you can, go through those spaces in AR many times over. So if you are scouting, what always has helped me is I would get a scan of the space that we're going to be shooting in, and then I'd go into my computer later and be like, okay, this is how much space we have to work with, and that's the prep is what decides, like, the tools for me, at least personally, in narrative. I use Polycam, but there's quite a few apps.
Yeah, and I mean, for us, it's kind of like just being equipped with the tools to be flexible. And I knew, like, for our main camera, just something that we could shoot all day. I wouldn't ever have to worry about media or batteries. And, in terms of low light, I would be fine. In terms of shooting in bright sunlight, shooting in cars. And then for, like, going to hospitals and all of that, it's like there's different levels of access. So being able to, like, the worst thing would be getting to the hospital and there you see this big
the C500, something bigger, and they're like, no, like you're not allowed in. And then we just don't film that day. So it's like having other tools available and knowing what I can feasibly sneak into a hospital and shoot, and still like maintain the integrity of the image. And, I shot on iPhone and had Filmic Pro, like the app to shoot on. And, you just try to like make it as close, as like the log version, so that it's not like a crunchy iPhone video, but it's like I can try to match it up a little bit. You can obviously tell it's shot on iPhone, but it's like, it's all in service of the story. And I think for us, it was a story that, at any moment, at any day we were shooting, we didn't really know what was going to happen. And so we were kind of like, we just want to be ready to always be shooting, always be able to capture whatever it is. Like if we're moving from a space that's totally no lights to like bright, terrible fluorescent lighting to like tungsten, it's like I have the hotkeys to be able to switch and like make it all palatable while I'm shooting and exposed properly. And it's all like very fast, quick, that I can adjust. And it's all, for me, it was just like, technically, like what can we do to make sure that we capture the story and then deal with it later. I mean, these cameras are so good now that it's like as long as you can get it on camera, you can probably work with it in post. I mean, to a degree, but yeah, they're great cameras. So,
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And for all of you coming to join us, thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your festival. And that's it in behalf of Canon and American Cinematographer. Thanks for being here.